Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome Misti Freeman Staley, the founder of FreeArm, to share her story of FreeArm and her son, Freeman. Welcome, Misti.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, Misti, FreeArm originated out of a personal tragedy with your son, Freeman. Do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about that background and what led you to starting FreeArm?
Sure. So my son Freeman, he was born in 2015. We didn't know he was going to have any sort of medical complications throughout my whole pregnancy. After he was born, we saw that there was a small cleft palate in the very back of his throat. We knew he wasn't going to be able to latch. He was life flighted from Helena, Arkansas, where we live now, 2 hours to Arkansas Children's Hospital. It was there that we started finding out a bunch of differences that Freeman had. So not only the small cleft palate, but he also had a coloboma in one eye where the black part drips down into more of a keyhole shape. So he was blind in that eye. He had an extra rib, a horseshoe-shaped kidney, a hole in the top of his heart, a hole in the bottom of his heart. So there were all of these sort of midline things that had happened that we never did find out why. We went through genetic testing, things like that, but it was just, we're not certain why he had those differences. We were at Arkansas Children's in the NICU for 3.5 months, which is crazy because Freeman was born full term. So there were a lot of preemie families getting to discharge before us. But while we were in the NICU, Freeman was put on ECMO in the early days that he was there. He had pulmonary hypertension, so it was hard to oxygenate his body. The vessels between his heart and lungs were really tiny. And so that was scary. At that time, I was pretty naive. I'd never heard of ECMO, and I'm kind of thankful for that because I didn't know how serious it really was. He did come off ECMO after 5 days. I got to hold him for the first time after birth on Mother's Day, which was really special. Towards the end of our stay, Freeman was trying to work up on feeds, but wasn't able to take in the calories he needed. And so we had a G-tube placed in his belly, and we discharged home with that G-tube and some at-home oxygen.
So what were some of the challenges that you faced? Because you have this wonderful, company now, FreeArm, and we'll talk about that shortly. But, going through this, what were some of the challenges you faced that ultimately led you to creating FreeArm?
Yeah, so while we were home, or I guess I should say, Freeman discharged home on gravity syringe feeds during the day. So that is an open syringe that then connects to the feeding tube, and that's plugged into the belly, and you pour milk and you pour meds in there. But Freeman was 3.5, so I was trying to hold him and hold the gravity syringe and put meds in and put milk in, but hold his passy in because he needed to suck as his tummy filled. But with that cleft palate, it would just pop out because he didn't have really strong suction. So it was trying to do this whole balancing act. It was at that time that I said, Will, help, I need something to hold this. While we were in the hospital, the nurses would always rig it because they couldn't stand and hold it. So It would always be taped to the side of the crib, or mostly hung over the top of the crib, the tall canopy crib, with a ribbon. But that ribbon would always get in the way to where when Freeman would spit up and aspirate and turn blue and doctors would rush over to bag him, they were having to kind of bat at this syringe that was hanging there to move it out of the way. They would also try and tape it to my shirt so I could hold him while he was eating. We wouldn't have to just feed him in his crib. But many times that syringe would come unstuck and I would end up wet and Freeman would end up wet. So when I was sitting on the couch at home trying to think, how do I mimic something like that
Right.
at home? And I didn't want to tape it to my shirt. I didn't want to get the couch wet and me wet and him wet. So that's when Will went to the garage and made the very first FreeArm, what it looked like at that time, which was 2 pieces of wood, 1 by 1 pieces on a hinge in like an upside down L shape. I was able to tape the back piece to the back of Freeman's crib, and then this top bar that hung over the top, a posy that I had from the hospital, and a piece of ribbon. I was able to put that around the gravity syringe and hang that from the top piece of wood. That way, if Freeman did start to spit up, I could swing that top piece out of the way really quick and lift him up quickly. It helped, but it was limiting. We could only feed him in the crib. After 5 weeks at home, with Freeman's pulmonary hypertension, he started retracting and breathing heavily again. So we called his doctor, and he said, yeah, go back to Children's and just go through the ER for an x-ray. We didn't think it was super serious, but going back through the ER, we ended up in the PICU, and we ended up being in the PICU for 5 months, which is insane. I'm on the PICU Family Advisory Board now, and average stay is 72 hours. So to really move into the PICU and make it your second home, we were there a long time. While Freeman was in the PICU, he received a trach, lots of different procedures. Since he was on so much peak pressure, he had a couple of chest tubes because he had holes in his lungs. And so he was never just really able to turn that corner. And so it was the day after Valentine's Day in 2016 that we lost Freeman. And it was one of the hardest days of my life, and still super hard to think back on it. But we were there every day cheering him on and never giving up. And I know that he felt our love.
Oh, absolutely. And, being a parent, I mean, people truly can't understand, right? Unless they've gone through a loss of a child, and you can't even really, I feel like, pretend to understand. But, the sympathies that, we give you, and that families and, friends probably gave you, hopefully gave you some comfort, but it never probably fully, erases that hurt and that loss. But out of that tragedy came FreeArm. And, I was reading also that you did create the Freeman Foundation, and you raised over $250,000 to build a state-of-the-art ADA accessible park in his honor. When you go through that loss, I'm sure those weren't anything on your radar, nothing that you were even thinking or considering. What was your kind of, I don't know if you'd call it an aha moment, or what was that turning point where you said, I want to take this loss and this hurt and this tragedy, and I want to, start the Freeman Foundation. I want to start FreeArm. Walk us through that process. What was that like, and when did you first start having those thoughts and then acting on them?
Sure. So it was that night leaving the PICU after we had had a chance to hold Freeman like tube and wire free, which was so strange. It was just a strange concept for us. But we stayed there for quite a while. And then once we were ready, we left and we were driving home. And it was me looking at Will and saying, what do I do tomorrow? Like I've been advocating so hard for Freeman over the past 10 months. I can't just move back into just normal life.
Right.
So that's when he said, what if we did something like built a playground in his memory, in the memory of other kids who have passed away, or something like that, to keep me busy, have a healthy way to grieve, but also give back through everything that we learned through Freeman's journey. And so that's when we started mentioning that to friends. We had mentioned it at Freeman's Celebration of Life ceremony that following week, and people started saying, I'll donate to that. Like, I would love to make that happen. And so that's when we started the Freeman Foundation, 501c3, and started raising money. And it was $250,000 that we ended up raising to put towards that playground, not knowing how much playgrounds really cost when we started out. Sure. We did not think we would have to raise that much money, but we wanted poured in place rubber surface so that families who were using wheelchairs could roll into the playground. We wanted ramps on the equipment so that kiddos or family members could get up on the equipment in the wheelchair. We have an ADA high back swing. We have a high back merry-go-round. We just have a lot of different features that everybody can use. And then go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in, and this, I don't want to minimize it, but somebody watching or listening to this might think, well, what makes that unique? What makes that special? And it's the fact that there's no other playground like this within 90 miles of where Freeman's playground is at, right? So this isn't like something every city has or that's easily found, and this is very unique.
Right. So at time of opening, there were no other ADA accessible playgrounds with ramps on the equipment and poured in place rubber surface within an hour and a half, 2 hour drive from
Right.
where we live. And so it was really life changing for families to be able to get the whole family out and be able just to go play.
Well, that's remarkable. So with feed tubing, people have misconceptions. They have a different idea in their head, or they think they know what it is. What do you find are some of the most common misconceptions about tube feeding that you encounter with helping these families with FreeArm?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily a misconception, but it's just that I had never met another person with a feeding tube before Freeman. And so now it's wonderful to see families out and about with their free arm. They're not tethered to their house anymore. They're not on pump feeds that are on an IV pole, and you can't wheel the IV pole down to the playground.
Right.
You're a little bit it's just the mobility piece is not there when you have heavy hospital equipment at home. So to be able to see families going camping and using their free arm, or going to the beach, it's just, I really hope that it opens the eyes of other people who have never seen kiddos or adults with feeding tubes. Through our social media, we make posts talking about, dinner and a movie, and it'll be someone having their dinner through their feeding tube and watching Netflix or watching a tablet, and they're on a park bench, or like eat and run, just things that you don't think about all that much when you eat orally. But to have people with feeding tubes be able to eat on the go and to have that mobility and quality of life, I really hope just kind of broadens and lessens those misconceptions about tube feeding.
Well, and I love the logo, because listening to you explain when Freeman was first born, and you're trying to hold him, and all these different factors, you don't have enough arms or hands to take care of it, right? And I mean, your logo is an octopus, which I think is so appropriate, because it truly is. I'm thinking back even for like our children, who they didn't require tube feeding. And you're trying to hold a blanket on them so they don't get chilled, and you're trying to hold the bottle and support their head. And I mean, now you add in another component like tube feeding. You just, how do you do it? I don't, and it's one of those things, maybe it's just you do what you have to do when you need to do it, kind of thing. But this is such a remarkable thing that you're doing for families, but it's not also just for children, right? I mean, you could be an adult who has to have tube feeding, and the free arm can help support them as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the free arm doesn't only hold that gravity syringe feed, but it also holds a pump and feed bag. I see you looking in
I'm
the background
seeing,
here.
yeah, yeah,
So for those watching, you can see that it holds the infinity pump, also the kangaroo joey,
IV
and a
bag.
feed bag up to 1200 mils. Can also hold an infusion pump and infusions. So you can take all of these and eat on the go. A lot of people who are tube feed or feeding tube users, they might have a backpack, but it's really tough to travel with a backpack when you're sitting in the car and you set that in the floorboard, but then that falls over, and then you're having to stop the car and pull over to get the lines unkinked so that the pump will stop beeping. But when you're able to set your free arm up in the car, the lines don't kink, and it's easier to be on the go.
Where do you see, so free arm started in, is it 2018? It's been on
Did
the market since the late 2018. So here you're going into your 4th year anniversary. Congratulations on that. Where do you see free arm 4 years from now?
Yeah, we want to be able to have every family who needs a FreeArm to be able to have one. Starting out in 2018, our goal was to get it to as many families as possible. And families were giving us feedback saying this is amazing. The FreeArm is an FDA Class 1 medical device. It is billable for insurance. And so talking with hospitals, talking with DMEs and home infusion companies to have them provide the FreeArm for their patients and then bill insurance will get it to that many more families who might not be able to pay out of pocket for the FreeArm. Currently, the FreeArm's used in every U.S. state, and I think we're up to 24 countries now, which is pretty incredible.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
And I want to point out too, because I don't know if we've mentioned it, this is not an IV pole. This is looking again at the great setup you have behind you, this is like a clamp. You can clamp it on a surface. And so it's very easily transportable. This is not a big pole with the big bulky wheels on the bottom and the long neck. And this is a very, I would say, small device in comparison to, a lot of feeding tube patients that I'm aware of. They have the IV pole, right? Or the IV pole is built to the bed. You can literally put this anywhere there's a safe, secure surface to attach it to, which, essentially you could even use it in the car if you had to, correct?
Correct. So the clamp, we purposely made the clamp to fit flat surfaces or rounded bars.
Yeah.
So we had the opportunity to go into Arkansas Children's and go into the supply closet with the NICU director and try it onto the different hospital cribs to make sure that it was going to fit those rounded bars. We worked with a family, and they're good friends now, but we met through Instagram through the FreeArm, and we still work with them to this day to send. We sent the FreeArm muscle prototype. We've also sent enhanced prototypes that we've worked on. And so being able to send that to them to test on Tony's wheelchair in different areas to make sure that the clamp we're designing clamps to wheelchairs, clamps to hospital cribs, talking with families about clamping it to strollers, really want it to be clamped on different surfaces so that you're not, you have a place to connect it and you're able to be on the go.
What is it like? So if a listener or viewer is in Arkansas or Little Rock, more specifically maybe, and they go to Children's and their child or even maybe their parent or themselves are, feeding tube, required feeding tube patients, is the hospital at this point now saying you need to try the FreeArm, or we're going to write you a prescription for it because this is going to make your life easier once you leave our care and you return to your own home? Is it to that point?
It is. And it's so special.
Yeah.
That Arkansas Children's is using the FreeArm now. They don't have to figure out creatively how to hold a gravity syringe. They have the FreeArm to be able to adjust the height of the feed. So you move the syringe up higher, the feed goes in faster. You move it lower, it goes in slower. They're able to do that and not have to find a place to hold it. They're also able to vent their high flow oxygen patients. And so when you have oxygen, but you also have a feeding tube, a lot of that air may go in the belly. And so with that can come some reflux and some discomfort. Sure. So being able to have that open syringe connected to that feeding tube held by the FreeArm, that air can come up through the tube and out of the syringe, relieving some of that discomfort. Yeah. With Arkansas Children's, they're using the FreeArm in their NICU, and then they're discharging those families home with their FreeArm. So those families are not going home and sitting on the couch and thinking, how in the world can I get an extra arm because I don't have enough arms to do all the things I need to do.
Right. It's remarkable, Misti, just truly remarkable, and must give you great satisfaction knowing how many families you're helping, albeit sadly from a tragedy you had to go through and will, but, kind of like with some other guests we've had, they're carrying on the memory of their loved one or their child, which, I'm sure gives you guys just great satisfaction. So for healthcare professionals that may be watching or listening to this, how can they purchase the FreeArm, or how can they get involved with the FreeArm company? And we will have links to all of your sites, in our show notes and on our website. But if they're wanting to reach out and say, I want to get this in our NICU, or I want to get this into our practice, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. They can reach out directly, info@freearmcare.com. We welcome direct POs that way. We can get it shipped out same week. We can drop ship it directly to your patients or to your facility. Hospitals can order through Medline. DMEs and home infusion companies can order through McKesson. We're set up with both of them. We're also talking with Cardinal and working on finalizing that contract today. I received another email. So please reach out and build that demand with these companies so that they will have it in stock and ready to ship. We want it to be as easy as possible for hospitals and organizations to purchase the FreeArm and provide for their patients. So children's hospitals, ALS clinics, cancer clinics, anyone that sees that this would benefit their patients, we want to hear from you and work with you.
Well, we hope that we'll help get the word out for you guys. What about for just a family who might be experiencing this right now and they want to just purchase one directly? How would you recommend they go about that?
They're welcome to purchase directly through our website or through Amazon. We do have an at-home patient price discounted from our MSRP of $259 down to $139. So we've tried to really lessen that so that it's not as much of an out-of-pocket burden for those families needing it right now. But I also encourage families, please reach out to your durable medical equipment company or your at-home supplier or your infusion company, because we do have companies all over the U.S. who are supplying the FreeArm to their patients and billing their insurance. And if your DME is not currently providing the FreeArm, it's really, really great for them to hear from a family how beneficial it would be. And we are happy to follow up as well with their contact there.
Because if they do have a physician also and insurance covers this, they really, instead of paying out of pocket, they could just get a prescription for it, couldn't they?
They can. And so we have a physician's written order and a letter of medical necessity template on our website. So you can go to freearmcare.com and print out one or the other of those templates, and then talk with your dietitian or talk with your doctor about the FreeArm and go ahead and have that signed.
Yeah. And what if somebody listening or watching has used the FreeArm or they want to share their story? How would you like for them to reach out directly to you?
Yeah, my email is misty@freearmcare.com. That's MISTI. And so they're welcome to send pictures. We love pictures. It does my heart so much good. Or if you're on social, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And we love when families tag us. We love resharing those photos with other families who are in our FreeArm family, because it's just so fun to see where everyone uses their FreeArm. If they're flying out of town for a family visit and they have it set up on the airplane, or they're just going to the zoo or going somewhere fun, it's FreeArms in the wild. It's fun to see where they end up. Yeah.
What is some stories that might stand out from families or, maybe healthcare professionals that have shared with you the difference that FreeArm has made in their lives? What do you have any that really stand out from the others? Top 2, top 3 that you want to share?
Sure, I do. So just a couple months ago, a wife had sent me a picture of her husband, and he had throat cancer. And so that's the reason why he had a feeding tube, but he was on some pretty high dose medication that made him very sleepy. And so she sent a picture, and he was sitting on the couch naked, but had a towel over his lap. But he got so tired of trying to hold the gravity syringe, but getting so sleepy from the medication that his hand would go limp and he would spill. And he got so tired of having to change his clothes multiple times a day that he would just take off all of his clothes, put a towel over his lap, and eat that way because he knew he would fall asleep. And she said, I'm so happy that we found the FreeArm, because now he's not worried about spilling the syringe anymore. And so sent me another picture, and he's fully dressed and he has the syringe held by the FreeArm, and he's like, yay, no hands. So it's stories like that where you think it's it's making tube feeding another way to eat,
Right.
and normalizing it a little bit, and just giving people that helping hand that you need when you have so much to juggle. As far as a physician story, what really stands out is a nurse. Her name is Rosalie, and she was one of Freeman's primaries at Arkansas Children's. And she texted me after work one day and she said, I was in pod 9 in Freeman's old bed space and I was using a FreeArm with my patient. And it was just really, really special to see how that came full circle.
Wow.
And it's stories like that where you then think about that family and that mom and that dad and the extended family that's there, and how they have the FreeArm now, and looking at going home and having that confidence in, I'll be able to feed my child the same way that I did at the hospital. I'll be able to feed them the same way at home.
Yeah, which makes all the difference in the world, especially with as a new parent having a newborn. I mean, you already have all the other stuff that can be overwhelming and intimidating and a little scary. And now you add that component into it. It just, it's a lot. It's a lot. But with FreeArm, you're helping to alleviate some of that, which is just tremendous. Misti, we are going to have all of the contact information as well as the links to all of the FreeArm sites on our show notes, on our website. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing you and Will's story and Freeman's story and just the remarkable work that you guys are doing at FreeArm. And any way we can help, we're going to be more than happy to do so. And I hope people will reach out, share their stories, and, maybe you're going to make some more lives a little bit easier with FreeArm.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
You're very welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd again like to thank Misti Freeman Staley for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters to share her story about FreeArm. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.